Council meeting of December 3rd, 2013 to order. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray? Yes. Marsh?
Yes.
Kenyon?
Here.
Petty?
Here.
Tennant?
Here.
Shopmeyer?
Here.
Adams? Here. Long? Mayor Jordan?
Here. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the mayor's recognitions, I would like to recognize Ms. Shay Hopper's class from Woodland Junior High, 9th grade class. They're pre-AP government students. If you'd stand to be recognized tonight. Yes. It's wonderful to have you here. I assure you, you won't be disappointed tonight. We have Bob Kalk here from the Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association to give a special award tonight. Bob? Good evening.
Good evening.
Again?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for the opportunity to do this tonight. The city is always bestowing awards on volunteers, and so it was only fitting that we turned it around a little bit. The Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association will be 11 years old the beginning of next year, and in that 11 years, we have accomplished some, I think, pretty amazing things. But we would have not been able to accomplish those things without our partners. And one of our most important partners has been the Fayetteville Parks and Recreation team. And today I would like to give a Golden Acorn Award to the group I call the Fayetteville Parks and Recreation team, which includes not only the obvious candidates, the leaders of the Parks and Recreation Department, but the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, the Urban Forestry Advisory Committee, all the staff of the parks, and even people that have absolutely nothing to do with parks, like the engineering department folks that work on designing trails, and the transportation folks that work on building trails. We at the Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association thank all of them, and I would like Connie, Allison, and Byron to come on up here so I can give them this. And it's the smallest award you can give because we're trying to save our money. And because of that, I have to get my glasses out to read it. Presented by the Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association to the Parks and Recreation team for your outstanding contributions to making our public natural areas accessible to all, improving the ecological value of what we have, engaging community members of all ages to experience our natural heritage, and working to create Fayetteville's enduring green network. Thank you all.
All right. I just can't, this means a lot to us and our whole city. You know, if administration here and our city council did not support all the things that we have done, we would not have been able to accomplish anything. So we appreciate you. And the Fayetteville Natural Heritage Group, I tell you, they are just awesome. They are an awesome partner to have, and we're very proud to be their partners. So thank you all.
Thank you all very, very much. The next order of business we have tonight is the quarterly financial report. Paul Becker will be giving the third quarter of 2013. I know you all are excited to hear that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the third quarter report, which ends September of this year. At that point in time, we were up about 3.2% in sales tax. We're down a little bit in court fees and fines. We're down about $300,000 in building permits for this point of year. But overall, we're up compared to what revenue we had estimated. So at this point in time, we're up about, expenditures are under, revenue is about $1.5 million at this point in time, which is very good. However, we do have 3 payrolls coming up in the next quarter in November, so that will pretty well offset that. We're up about $300,000 in the general fund as of the end of September. We'll see how the year end closes, but we're pretty well on track to budget as far as the general fund is concerned. Water and sewer is certainly down compared to water sales a year ago. If you remember, we had the very, very big drought, so we're down about 10% in revenues to the water and sewer fund. However, the budget was projected lower this year because that, in fact, was an anomaly, so we're right about on budget compared to revenues expenditures at this point in time. Solid waste fees were up about 1%, so we're kind of holding our own. We're right about where we were tracking. The one area I do want to bring attention to is the airport. If you remember, we brought in mid-year the fuel sales in that operation at the airport. At this point in time, we have not hit what was anticipated as far as aviation fuel at that point in time. However, that is offset pretty well by the decrease in expenditures of fuel. So we don't sell it, we don't have to buy as much, but that's something we'll certainly be monitoring in the administration as we go forward. Other than that, things are pretty well on track at this point in time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does council have any questions for Paul? Thank you, Paul. Sounds good. All right. Under the consent agenda, number 1, the reapproval of the November 5th, 2013 City Council meeting minutes and approval of the November 19th, 2013 City Council meeting minutes. Number 2, General Construction Solutions Incorporated. Resolution approving change order number 1 to the contract with General Construction Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $34,037.14 for the completion of construction on FEMA project location 22 Sanitary Sewer near the entrance to the Cliffs Apartments related to spring 2011 flooding and approving a budget adjustment. Number 3, Grubbs, Hoskins, Barton, and White Incorporated Amendment number 1. Resolution approving amendment number 1 to the contract with Grubbs, Hoskins, Barton, and White Incorporated for the additional amount of $8,000 for additional geotechnical evaluations for Track 14 of the Federal Industrial Park, approving a project contingency of $2,000 and approving a budget adjustment. Number 4, Continental Flooring Company, a resolution authorizing the purchase and installation of vinyl plank flooring from Continental Flooring Company for the Transportation Division Office in the amount of $38,843 plus applicable bonding fees and tax pursuant to an NJPA cooperative purchasing agreement. Number 5, Landers Toyota of Little Rock, a resolution authorizing the purchase of 2 Toyota Tacoma pickup trucks in the total amount of $55,910 pursuant to a state procurement contract from Landers Toyota of Little Rock for use by the Transportation and Water and Sewer Division and approving a budget adjustment in the amount of $28,500. Number 6, bid number 13-20, Shipley Motor Company of Lowell. Resolution authorizes the purchase of 1 Mack LE 613 truck with Wayne Titan body in the amount of $245,060 pursuant to bid number 13-20 from Shipley Motor Company of Lowell for use by the Solid Waste Division. Number 7, Assistance Firefighters Grant, a resolution authorizing application for a 90-10 matching assistance to firefighters grant through FEMA in an estimated amount of $424,500 for the purchase of a frontline fire pumper apparatus for the fire department. Number 8, 2013 Sales and Use Tax Bond issue proceeds, a resolution approving a budget adjustment total amount of $22,750,000 to appropriate proceeds from 2013 sales and use tax bonds for street projects.
I move we accept the consent agenda.
We have a motion and accept the consent agenda as read. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray,
Yes.
Marsh,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Shopmire,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Under unfinished business, number 1, amend UDC height and setback regulations, an ordinance to amend 161.16, 160.18, 161.19, 161.20, 161.21, 161.22, 161.23, 161.24, and 161.25 to change setbacks and stepbacks for adjoining property and height limitations for several districts, and to amend 164.11 height and setback regulations exceptions to reduce or eliminate setbacks in certain circumstances, to require wider sidewalks for building higher than 36 feet, and to provide a building height variance for buildings receiving LEED Gold certification and meeting other requirements, and to amend 156.02 to authorize a requirement for height variance applicant to provide a view shed analysis or sun shadow study. Okay, what do we have? Mark. Oh,
Mr. Mayor, Alan Long was unable to be here tonight, and he played a very pivotal role in working this ordinance through our ordinance review committee. I would like to request that we hold this ordinance until he is able to participate in the discussion and vote.
okay.
So the motion.
That's
Yes,
a motion.
that is a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table. What discussion do we have on that? Mark?
Well, I feel like that we're faced with a moratorium that's ending. There's been a lot of discussion on this. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the meeting of the Ordinance Review Committee, but I have reviewed it. And I've looked extensively at and reviewed again and again the trail that we've taken from the initial discussion until where we are now. And it's gone from something very simple to protect the integrity of neighborhoods and to offer the protection and the availability of fresh air and sunlight to residences that are already established in the downtown area, to a very broad and all-encompassing ordinance change that is so broad that I don't feel like we're at the point to move forward in that broad sweep. But at the same time, since we are faced with the end of the moratorium, I think we should go ahead and move forward with something, and you will find in front of you an amendment that I'm going to offer this evening that I would like to go ahead and pursue this evening, because we are at the point of a moratorium ending.
Well, we got to vote on the table first, but I
Right.
understand that's going to be a motion.
And so,
correct?
but I'm getting...
Okay, I'm sorry.
In an effort to go ahead and move forward, I would say that I cannot support tabling this further.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, any other comments on that?
Just like to say something.
Rhonda?
I just have a
Becky?
question about the moratorium, because it's clear that the moratorium is, we set this date so that we would not risk having changes made while this was being considered. It's dead.
Yes, the moratorium will expire before your next meeting.
Before the next meeting.
I think
Expires
Jeremy is clear on that too, and so that the reason for the moratorium is to give the city council enough time to act. And so if you want to act before the moratorium expires and development can occur no matter what, then you would need to make a decision tonight and actually pass some ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Matthew, I think you were next, and then Sarah.
I'd just like to reiterate how important Alderman Long was to the process at ordinance review. You know, he chairs that committee. He also prepared the amendments that came out of the committee, which I think were useful and anticipated or responded to the input that we got from the other council members that were there and from the members of the committee. I think it's vital that he's here to weigh in that capacity, being chair of that committee. So that's why I think it's important he's here.
Okay. Sarah?
I'm actually drafting a new, much more streamlined ordinance that will address a lot of the comments and concerns that I intend to file tomorrow morning. That hopefully will, by putting that in place before the end of the moratorium, help this process along while safeguarding the homeowners.
Okay, so let me get this straight in here. Mark, you're going to present an amendment after we vote on the table.
Yes.
Okay. And then
If-
Sarah, you're going to bring an amendment as well.
Mayor, I
A
must
new
say that if
ordinance.
the
A
motion
new
to
one.
to table passes, then there can be no amendments
I
presented. This
understand.
item will be then left on the table until the next meeting.
That's what I was trying to get straight when we were going through this. So, any other discussion on the table? Yes,
So if we table it, someone can come into planning immediately
not
and
till
all of
after the
this-
10th, from what I
Well,
understand.
Before our next
before our next
Yes,
meeting.
absolutely.
And all this
Yep.
months of this is for naught.
That's
Okay.
true.
So I guess out of respect, I usually vote to table something when an alderman can't be here. And I understand that Alderman Long did a lot of work, but who knows who's going to be sick at the next meeting? I mean, we have a moratorium and a date that was put before us as an important consideration of the last time we sat on this, right? I mean, and I think Alderman Marsh, you were concerned about that date, right?
Right. And, you know, I wish that we could move forward, but the reality is that this ordinance has mutated significantly, and it's gotten really messy. And, you know, I think part of this was initially when I had asked Kit to draft the ordinance, and he had sent back the initial draft. We just wanted to file something to put that moratorium in place. I didn't do a good job in editing the whereases in order to really refine the intent of this ordinance. And I'd really like to go back and clean that up and incorporate a lot of the comments and suggestions that we've received, as well as, the discussion from the Ordinance Review Committee, and come back with something a lot cleaner. You know, this is gonna affect our community for a long time, and it's really important that we get it right. And I think that it's really important that we involve the entire council in such a large decision.
Okay. Okay, so you're going to bring something that's amended, but you want to send it to ordinance review, if I understand correctly?
Yeah, I'm prepared to withdraw the ordinance tonight if needed and file a new one tomorrow morning.
The city council has to vote. You can't withdraw something that's before the city council.
Okay. All right. Yes, Mark.
With all due respect, I actually endorse the comments that have been made by Alderman Petty and Alderman Marsh, that the intent was to move forward with this. We still will have the opportunity in the future to revise the elements associated with the discussions that we've had. But my concern is with the moratorium and with the discussions we've had to date, in order to go ahead and move forward into the next stage where we have protected at least part of what the intent, and that was to protect some residential areas downtown, that we should go ahead and do this before our next meeting so that we do have at least some level of protection for the downtown areas, which is that is where we started at, downtown general, and Main Street. I always get these words wrong, but this main
Street
core.
Center.
That's right.
And so I think that we should move forward so that we can have the protection that would be offered to individuals like Nina Shirky with some immediacy. Otherwise, someone could come in and what we're doing up to this point would be a window of opportunity for someone to come in, and I'm not saying they would or wouldn't, but it does leave a loophole, a window open, an opportunity for someone to come in and move forward on a development that would impair the livability of these residents that are in the central area of Fayetteville. So that's why I think we need to move forward this evening. And with all due apologies to Alderman Long, and I understand it's tough when you're absent. I just think that it is important because of the timeliness of the moratorium that we move forward this evening.
Okay. Sarah?
Maybe as a compromise, if we could vote on the existing ordinance, but call it a pilot program, and it would expire in 1 year, and that would give us plenty of time to hammer out a new, improved version of it and protect us in the interim.
Well, I think we really need to vote on the tabling issue before we can really go on.
That must be
much of
resolved
anything.
first before you can get to any other amendment.
Okay, let's make a call on that. Is there any other comments on the table? All right, let's vote on that and see. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean, I guess I think, I would really like to know what our plan is going forward before we vote to table it, whether it's going to be Mark's ordinance, or if we're going to do this maybe as a pilot program. So I think I'd like to get a little feedback from everyone.
Well, from what I understand, we're talking about the tabling end of it
Okay.
right now. And so I don't know how else to handle it other than to,
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are you meaning a pilot program with the ordinance that, so you, down a while ago when you said you didn't like some of the things you did in it, and you wanted to change it, it was messy, now you think it'd be okay to try it for a year?
I think that it would allow us to put something in place to protect the existing homeowners while we figure out a much cleaner version.
I
So
would
it would be a
suggest-
temporary fix.
I would suggest we vote on the tabling before we start discussing any possible
and see
amendments.
where we go. Is there any public comment on the tabling? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council. Let's vote on the tabling and see where we go. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray? No. Marsh?
Yes.
Kenyon?
No.
Petty?
Yes.
Tennant?
No.
Shopmire?
No.
Adams?
No.
Okay, all right, it's not going to be tabled.
So now you can discuss amendments.
Now let's, and Mark, you had something you were going to float first, and then Sarah, I think you had something in.
There is a published amendment in front of you that has also been presented to our city attorney and with our city attorney. This is an amendment that indeed recognizes the homeowner's rights for adequate sunlight and room for air and wind should be protected. It also recognizes that this is an ordinance that is brief and to the point, that handles the situation that we're faced with here in the core of our city in the downtown area. And it also recognizes protecting those individuals that are residents of this area. I move that we move forward with this ordinance.
Well, that you amend to this ordinance?
The amendment to the ordinance I move that we move forward with an amendment which is placed before you to the ordinance that we're considering at this point.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all right.
And Mayor, if I could.
Let me read the title and you read the,
Oh, okay.
how's that sound?
That's fine, sounds fine.
Let me read this. An ordinance to amend 164.11 height and setback regulations exceptions to provide homeowners protection of their right to sunlight and air. Carrie.
Whereas favorable homeowners' rights to adequate sunlight and room for air and wind should be protected, and whereas preservation of the many homeowner single-family residences used in homes in the downtown master plan district have inadequate setback protection from large and tall buildings, require that minimum side and rear setbacks and upper story step backs be enacted to ensure adequate sunlight, wind, and air for those homes to remain attractive and healthful places to live. And whereas residential homeowners who wish to install solar panels or passive solar heat collectors must have enough protected access to sunlight for those ecological and green technology products to work effectively. And whereas trees and other plants within the yards of homes also need adequate sunlight that reasonable setback and step back regulations can ensure. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amend Section 164.11, height of setback regulations, exceptions, by amending its title to be height of setback regulations, exceptions, and home protection requirements, and by enacting a new Section C, home protection requirements as shown below. And I should note to the council, this is really the operative language that is being suggested tonight. Subsection C, home protection requirements, regardless of any other setback or build-to zone regulations. New multifamily, commercial, office, parking deck, or mixed-use construction exceeding 24 feet in height, which adjoins or abuts a single-family home being used primarily as a single-family residence within the downtown general or Main Street Center zoning districts must, at a minimum, be set back from the side or rear adjoining property line at least 15 feet. The maximum height of the new building from the 15-foot setback shall be 36 feet for an additional 15-foot step back from the residence property line. These setback and step back requirements are minimum so that if larger setbacks and step backs are required by other zoning laws, the larger setback and step backs are controlling. This is very similar to the initial ordinance that was presented to you and is shown on your pages 62 and 63 of your agenda packet. It has been tightened significantly, and I think improved, to make sure it is limited only to the downtown general and Main Street Center zoning districts, which are located primarily in the downtown area and then also in the Walker Park area. And of course, this one only would protect a single-family home being used primarily as a single-family residence. No other buildings would receive protection and would not limit any kind of single-family residence being constructed within the city. So it is, I think, been narrowed, and I think that because of what I've heard from you and what I've heard also from the citizens at the last meetings, I came forward and wrote this in response to comments from the aldermen and also comments from the citizens, and have presented that to you.
Okay, let me get this straight now. We're back to what you was originally presented, downtown general and Main Street Center, but we've added multifamily commercial office parking deck or mixed-use construction. Is that correct?
This is, yes, as you see it right here is what I presented now. It is slightly different than what was originally presented back on the 17th day of September. It's been narrowed to 2 zoning districts, and and there have been some other changes to make it even more narrow and focused.
Okay, let's start with that. Mark and then Adele.
Okay, I just want to explain again, the moratorium will be up before our next meeting. This is an opportunity to have a measure in place that is simple, that is not complex, that offers protection to those individuals that came forward early in the process and asked for protection. And we still have the opportunity to move forward and look at additional activity and move along, but this simple home protection amendment will offer immediate protection to those individuals in Ward 2 especially, which I represent and that I've heard from, and they want the protection, and that's why I think it is important to go ahead and move forward on this, and it also gives us the opportunity to take a step at a time and look and really evaluate, as suggested by Alderman Marsh, the opportunities and the alternatives that we have to have a good zoning and regulatory legislative packet in front of us as we move forward. So that's why I think it's important to go ahead, and this is voted on this evening, and it does indeed, I think, meet the critical requirements of those that we initially intended as we started this process. So that's why I'm happy to bring this forward to City Council this evening.
Okay, Adele.
Yes, I agree completely with Alderman Kenyon, and I want to thank our city attorney for drafting this ordinance for us. I think he told us the last time we talked about this that that's what he planned to do and try to reflect what he had heard from both the citizens and the council. So when I went to ordinance review, I was very pleased with seeing this much simplified ordinance as he had told us, but that evening we were not offered the opportunity to discuss this ordinance because the committee made the decision to only discuss the first ordinance. So I felt that my time at that meeting was pretty much wasted. And so I feel very strongly that this is the direction we should go. I think perhaps we want to make adjustments in the future, but it needs to be done with lots of citizen input as has been the Fayetteville custom. Anytime we make many changes, we allow for many opportunities for citizen input, and we have not had that yet. So I thoroughly and completely support this home protection ordinance as drafted by our city attorney.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
I think the best part about government compromise that I've seen in my life is when you take some of the best ideas of something and take it and add it to other ones and subtract some things that don't work. And I think this idea in the beginning had very good intentions, and I think everybody up here does things with passion and believes in them very much. And even the people that I would talk to that were adamantly against this for one reason or another could agree with me that there were some parts of it that made sense. And I think that's what this does. This very, in a concise way, puts some of the best pieces of this together, and the important areas where I think these things should apply, downtown General, Main Street Center, all those sort of things come together here. And I want to reiterate what Adela just said. I want to commend Alderman Kenyon and the city attorney for bringing this forward in this manner. I think this is a good compromise, and it brings together the good ideas that we need to do, and I'm in favor of it.
All right, anything else before? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate the viewpoints. Now, I have to respectfully, though, disagree with what's been said. Anybody who's paid attention to the meetings knows I've been a big supporter of this process and getting something out of it. I have to say this is absolutely the wrong way to do it, in my opinion, and I think that because of this. Two reasons, mainly. The first being it's absolutely prejudicial against anybody who can't afford to live in a single-family house. I mean, what this says is anybody who lives in a townhome or a flat or an apartment is a second-class citizen and doesn't deserve the protections. I think that's sad. Second, this has more to do with practical development concerns, and I talked about this the first meeting here. If you look at lots that are zoned downtown General or Main Street Center, in general, they're small lots, 30 feet wide, 40 feet wide, 50 feet wide, small lots. If this ordinance were to pass and you had one of those lots and on either side was a single-family home, the only thing that could be built there would be a single-family home, unless it was less than 24 feet tall. And if you were going to build something other than a single-family home, you would only be left, you'd have to subtract 15 feet from either side of the property before you could do anything. At least in the other version that's before us, there are attempts made to respond to the concerns, and there are exemptions in place to ameliorate the impact that is in this ordinance. So what does that mean? If you have a 30-foot property, you're out. You can't do anything unless it's a single-family home. 40-foot property, you've got 10 feet. Figure out what to do with it. I don't think we even allow a dwelling to be built that is small, that is skinnier than 18 feet in these zones. If you have 50 feet, you got 20 feet. Congratulations, you can build a dwelling that is not a single-family home. So I think there are practical concerns that I think just are unworkable. But mostly, I just can't support it because it's prejudicial against anybody who can't afford to live in a single-family house.
Okay.
Oh, one other thing. If the premise is to extend the moratorium and Alderwoman Marsh intends on introducing a new ordinance to create a new moratorium, then I don't understand why this has to be passed tonight.
Okay. Mark.
I respectfully disagree with Alderman Petty in the intent of this legislation. We still have the opportunity to come back and reevaluate this to add opportunities for smaller lots. This, as I mentioned early on, is an immediate opportunity to protect properties of individuals and to protect the neighborhood integrity of single-family neighborhoods in our downtown area. And that is what this does. I'm not saying that we don't need townhomes. I'm not saying that we don't need other types of multifamily development. I'm saying that this evening, tonight, as we move forward, we need to protect the neighborhoods and the integrity of the neighborhoods and those neighbors that have purchased their single-family homes in this area with the opportunity to enjoy the life that they had intended when they bought their single-family home. We can always come back with an opportunity to adjust this in the future after a very public awareness campaign similar to the ones that we've had in the past, where we've had charrettes, where we've had open discussion. This is simply, with immediacy, the opportunity to protect our neighborhoods and some of the most historic and deepest in heritage that we have in Fayetteville. This evening, we still have the opportunity to move forward with further ideas down the road. But I think tonight is the night to vote for this with the information that we have to protect the integrity of the single-family home that we currently have in this part of our city. That's all this is saying. To say that someone is a second-class citizen is taking this to a level of, well, it's simply not the intent of this legislation. The intent is to respect those individuals that are currently in their single-family homes. And that is what we were asked to do when we started this discussion. And it is in the ward that I represent, and I have heard from all these. I live in this area. I know what has happened in this area since I have lived here. So this is simply something that we can do now to offer protection to those individuals that have asked for it. And then we can move forward with a very structured, very well-reasoned plan so that we can move. And this is in line with what we've done with our charrettes in the past. A lot of hours were spent by individuals whenever we put together the plans in the past. And we need to do the same thing and offer the same respect for individuals and the neighbors that are directly impacted in this part of our city. So that's why I urge this tonight. It is in no way intended to prevent an investigation of further development as we move along. Bottom line, this is offering protection this evening for our established neighborhoods that have a deep heritage, and the value of heritage is very important here in the center part of our town.
Okay. Yes, Sarah.
Well, I really respect and appreciate Alderman Kenyon's efforts here. I definitely agree with Alderman Petty that this does discriminate against people who can't afford to own their homes. You know, I wasn't able to qualify for a home loan. And I think there are probably a lot of people in the community like me. And as a single person, I don't need a whole house to myself. So many times I've lived in apartment houses in many of our historic structures around town. But this wouldn't protect me, and it wouldn't protect those historic structures. But I do think that we do need to do something to immediately protect our neighborhoods. And if we were to add an expiration date to this ordinance to encourage us to go ahead and develop something that was more appropriate for our community, I might be more likely to support it. I also received some correspondence from Jacobs Newell today with a building section in it showing a building section of a 3-story townhome, which I think would be very appropriate for downtown. And they really need about 39 feet instead of 36 feet in order to build a 3-story dwelling appropriately. And so if we could amend that to 39 feet and add a 6-month expiration date on this, I would be willing to do this, even though I really don't, I don't think that this is in the best interest, long-term interest of our community. And a 15-foot setback is extreme.
Okay. So we have an amendment to the amendment. Right?
Well, you can if there is a motion to amend the motion that's before us right now, which is this amendment. Usually it's better to vote on the one to get it right in front of you, but you can certainly amend it, and you can amend it now if you want to. You can make a motion to amend what has been presented.
I think my way of thinking is if we get through this and we do public comment and we come back, then I'm sure there's going to be amendment to go to 39 feet. I'm just spitballing here. So to avoid a lot of that, is that an amendment, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second on that? Okay. Well, it stays at 36 feet, correct?
At this point.
At this point. Now, would you all like to hear public comment on it? I take that as a yes. All right. We will open it now to public comment. Everyone gets one turn at the microphone, and keep your comments directly to the chair of that would be me, that's running the meeting. Don't get engaged with a council member or someone from the audience, all right? Be respectful. If you can come back to the microphone, if a council member wants to ask you questions, okay? Introduce yourself. And this is on the amendment. Everybody good with that? Okay, let's begin. Who wants to be first? Don't everybody crowd the mic at first.
I'll be very brief. Tom Overby, 211 North Block. I've spoken before. I'm not going to stand in front of a bulldozer and get mowed down, but I would simply say that I would ask you in the near future to consider issues other than single-family homes. If you go look, this is the Nina Shirkey amendment because you haven't figured it out, but if you go next to Nina, since she's a nice person, I like her. If you go to Nina Shirkey's house and look at the house next door, which is not a single-family residence, tell me the difference. There isn't any, except one is occupied by people and the other is a business. Light and air is important to people besides single-family residences. So please move forward in the future on something appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, who would be next? Yes. Nick.
Good evening. My name is Todd Jacobs. I'm the managing partner for the Jacobs Newell Company. I'll just cut straight to it. We built a business model based on Dover Coal coming to town. We participated in that heavily for the downtown area for protection. 2020 came, we were participants. 2030, we were participants. We are one of the few builders doing infill development on a small scale. What we see before you tonight scares us deeply. We see no predictability coming from a city administration and from the council member. It's very difficult for us to go to our banks and ask for loans to do infill development when there's this much of uncertainty. Tonight, so with the amendment that Alderman Keenan has proposed, I have a few clarifications that I need to make sure I understand since this has just became available to the public. Height limit is 24 feet. Is that,
Pardon?
Height limit 24 feet, is that correct?
That's when the setback would first kick in.
So, if example, if I own a piece of property, it is next to a single-family house, downtown General, someone please walk me through what the process would be if I was to try to develop this property. I'm unclear of the process.
What are you building?
Single family, 3 stories, 39 feet.
That would, single family would not be affected by this.
Okay, duplex, row homes?
I think you can have up to 2 attached townhouses and it's still a single family, it's not multifamily, but I'll ask Jeremy on that.
Actually, the code states up to 3, so we have a use unit 26 is multifamily, so anything over 3 attached units would qualify as multifamily, and that's when.
So you could have 3 on a lot, but you could not have more than that, and then you'd reach multifamily. But if you had 3, then it would not affect you.
So to clarify, I can build a 3-story, 39-foot tall, single-family house per this proposal. I can also build 39 feet, row home, duplex, whatever classification you want to call it as well under this.
I think that is correct. A duplex would be the same as
That was
an
the
attached
intent.
house, wouldn't it?
That's correct.
And is there a height limit? So are we at 24 feet on this? Because really for the develop infill projects on these small lots that Mr. Petty's talked about, we are talking, literally our lots are 30 by 100, 30 by 70. We're talking small lots. If we're unable to develop this property will have very little use to most people. It will go undeveloped.
Okay, what is restricted here is not single family, but what is restricted here is new, multifamily, commercial, office, parking deck, or mixed-use construction exceeding 24 feet. If you're building townhouses and you don't have more than 3 on a lot, then you would not be restricted by this.
So the match, so I would go to my UDC and maximum building height would stay at 56 feet? Is that the way I would read this?
This proposed ordinance does not change the maximum height in any building district.
Okay.
I have a point. I received your correspondence, and I really appreciated it because I needed that information. And that was, the intent is to allow exactly the type of development that you are building down in that part of town. So listen, you do not know how much I respect that you sent me in the nick of time the elevations and the information, because this is actually to encourage that type of development in the Walker Park area. So unless I'm wrong, and I think that we've talked about this extensively with the city attorney, it is in line with the Dover Cole guidelines that were set forth. And again, we still have the opportunity to move forward and to develop some additional opportunities. But in the short run, and as we move forward, this is the way I look at it is to exactly encourage the type of development that you are doing down in that part of town. I lived at 404 South College for 4 years, a very tiny home. But what I know is this was back when I was in college. This part of town has a legacy of the industrial basis and the working class of Fayetteville. And most of the individuals that were my neighbors were in their 80s, and they're deceased now. But I developed such a wonderful and rich education from some of these individuals, and to see developers such as you to come in and redevelop it, and it is more affordable the way that you're working it and allowing it to be revitalized. I want to protect that with this. I want to encourage that type of development. I would rather see that type of development than a monstrosity of 280 units packed together in a city block, because I want to protect the heritage and the integrity of a neighborhood that has been there literally since the beginning of our city. So that is the intent, and I think that this is exactly in line with the information that you sent me earlier today.
I believe it is. I think a lot more of this is clarified to me, so I think my anxiety and issues are going lower. I do have one follow-up question from Mr. Pate. We do have 5 building permits that are sitting, ready to go. We have a loan in place to develop the last of our mill project. Under this proposal, do my building permits meet this?
I don't know that I can answer that specific question. If they're all single family, then certainly it wouldn't even apply.
We have one single family that's 39 feet tall due to elevation change of using an existing alley. We have 2 row homes, cars attached inside that are, I think, 38 feet tall. Is as short as I can get them down to.
How many units? And connected units, or is
Two,
it three?
two connected, so it'd be
Okay,
two
well, you
single-
can have up to 3 connected units and it still be considered a single family under this ordinance.
Okay.
And with the applications that are in front of Jeremy right now, there's not any that's over 3 connected units, is my understanding. Is
That's
that
correct. I do not have.
So therefore, you should be able to go forward with your development. And
But I do
if
respect Jeremy's position. He wants to look at the building
Yeah,
permits
indeed.
and see exactly
Indeed,
what's
I'm not
passed.
saying that, I'm not the one that does it, but I respect the integrity of your development, and the nature of this amendment was so that you could
The
move.
downtown general is, that zoning is really the key to infill. We have a wide range of homeowners. We're trying to do rentals, we're trying to do a variety of different price points to get people in. The downtown general really does give us that flexibility to work with these strange lots that.
That's right.
That are everywhere that Matthew's talked about. So with this, I believe that answers my questions.
Well, my intent is to allow you to move forward with the great development that you have done, and if I need to take a friendly amendment to move this to 39 feet rather than 36 feet, I certainly would be happy to do that.
Mayor, I just want to make a point that if a developer has a permit issued by the city today, it would have been considered under not only our current code, but whatever moratorium we're under with this ordinance. So we would not have issued a permit that would not have been in compliance with both of those. So if you're holding one, then I don't think it would be impacted by it. Any new changes obviously put in place would be for new submittals.
And if it is single family, then the 36 limit would be fine because it doesn't apply to the single family home.
Because what I'm doing here is trying to get and protect the integrity of established neighborhoods here in our city core. And
Well,
you
we
certainly are doing that, so
We
thank
greatly
you.
understand that. It's just presenting the information. We hang on every word that the administration, this council says of how we go forward developing property and what we present to our bankers of trying to continue to redevelop in South Fayetteville. So with this, though, this answers my general questions.
Well, I just have if I could
Go
ask you a
ahead.
question. I wrote you back late this
Yes, you
afternoon.
did. Thank you.
Because I have your letter right here, and so you said in conclusion, we believe these proposed changes will be devastating in our ability to continue to develop infill projects. And you said above that over the last couple of weeks, we've tested the proposed changes, and the new proposed regulations were passed, the majority of our projects would not meet these. So I was basing, part of my decision tonight on this, thinking that you were,
We take the ordinance, whatever I have is most current, I go to the website and we test it against a real project. And a lot of times, we are testing against really weird lots, and we don't have time to go to the staff and say, hey, can we set up a meeting for this? Here's gonna be a situation that's gonna require a variance, we're gonna have to city council, of some type of interpretation that hasn't been fully thought through. And those are projects we don't want any part of. I do not want to come to city council for any type of project or planning commission. We want to be development by right, whatever the code is, that's what we want to build to. So some of that was us working through a little bit of confusion on my part, talking to a couple of council members, I think understand it, follow-up conversation with Pate, and this, I think, clarifies for us our ability to move forward with projects that we currently have under contract, new property, that are contingent upon how the outcome of this meeting tonight. So I think my questions are answered.
I want to clarify as well, the reason Mr. Jacobs' permits are currently held is they're caught in the moratorium. They cannot be permitted because they would not comply with the ordinance being considered, not the one that you're amending,
no,
but
but
the
the
one
old
that's
one.
being considered.
That's what I was trying to say. I believe you were saying that had we passed this other one tonight, you would really be unhappy
They
with
would
us.
simply have to change their design.
Okay, yeah, change the design. Okay, thanks. That clarifies before that. Thank you.
But Jeremy, may I say, with what we have here in front of us tonight, I'm not putting you in a corner or anything, but it gives the appearance that they would be able to continue?
Just generally, if it's single family, two family, or three family
That's what I'm
development,
saying.
none of this would apply whatsoever. So
That's what I'm saying, and that's why I think it's important to go ahead and move forward with this tonight so that we can protect our neighborhoods and move forward with development now that we have an economy that is ready to move forward, and we need to have that opportunity available. I mean, I will say I'm a mortgage banker, okay? And I know that the opportunity is going to be here to move forward with mortgage loans more readily available, so now's the opportunity, and I don't want to inhibit that in the future. So that's why I think that this is relevant to pass this evening and to move forward with it.
Just one final thought as well, and this has only been briefly mentioned, but I've never been in a situation where we have an ordinance that amendment proposed at the council level that has a moratorium and then another one proposed almost immediately thereafter. If such an ordinance would be proposed tomorrow, say, then a moratorium likely would start over, which would potentially hold any permits that we're holding now again. So it's just something to be aware of as you continue talking through that process. I was just reading through the ordinance to see if that would apply, and it does appear a new ordinance would start that clock again.
A new ordinance would appear, okay, but if we pass this evening, the ordinance would be passed as amended, and it would allow us to go ahead and review permits that are currently in the office. And that's what we've got to do. We need to get this moving. We need to give the builder the opportunity. We need to let the individual have the opportunity to move in their homes.
Okay. Who else would like to address us tonight?
Mayor, my name is Hatham Alley. I don't live in Fayetteville, but we do develop in this city. So I guess I'm a little confused. I mean, we're 36 feet, 24 feet, 39 feet. I guess pick your poison here, whatever anybody wants to do. But so we own the property between Church and Block. Okay, so what does this ordinance or this amendment to this ordinance affect our property?
Do you abut a single-family home?
On the Church side.
Does
Or
that
Block
mean-
side, I'm sorry, on the back of the Block side.
So there's not a street between you and the single-family home?
There is no street.
Okay, then it would affect, if you're going to build a tall building, if you plan to build a tall building, then there would be a 15-foot setback from the home's property line. If it is a single-family home being lived in as a single-family home, then there would be a 15-foot setback from its property line toward your property line. And then you could build up to 36 feet high at that point. And then if you want to go higher than 36 feet, then you would have to have another 15-foot step back, and then you could go to the maximum height allowed in that zone.
Do you guys know what this does for a development? I mean, there's no way you can do this on our property. There's just no way you can develop. I mean, when we bought this property, there was, and so let me make sure, on Church is zero lot line on Church.
This
On the
has no
street.
effect to any street frontage line.
Okay, so on the sides and on the front, we don't have any setback, zero.
Unless, only the part that's abutting a single-family home's
That's still a
property
major,
line.
that's still a major effect. I mean, the unknown, there's no way I can go to a bank and say 15-foot setback, then go up 36 feet and go another. That's 30 feet setback. I mean, this is absolutely, I mean, you trying to kill development here? I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. I mean, this has gone everywhere, but, I mean, even the person, the council lady that is proposed this don't even want this to pass anymore. She wants to shelf it. I don't understand if we're trying to kill development here or not. I guess that's the question here. I mean, this is, the unknown is absolutely, the 15-foot setback will absolutely kill any development on our property. So, thanks.
Okay. Who else would like to address us?
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Aubrey Shepherd. A lot of this argument tonight, goes back to the fact we still don't have our low-impact development measures in force. I think it's 4 or 5 years. One of the people who was here speaking a few minutes ago was actually attended the same one that some of you did and that I did and a lot of other people attended, a meeting about low-impact development. And everybody got a booklet. And certain people there said, well, the reason we're building places without concern for low-impact development. We can't afford to. And that's somehow based on buying this very inexpensive property in South Fayetteville and trying to pack it with everything you can. Another person, maybe in this room right now, said to me, well, why is this water coming up? Every time we drill down here on this flat lot in South Fayetteville and try to put in our concrete base thing, water comes uphill from it. That's because there's groundwater in addition to surface water, and they're not taking that into account. We simply should not be building tiny lots as infill where there will no longer be any absorbent soil. And this is stuff I've said before in different ways, but there should not be the thought of filling every 35-foot or 30-foot lot, 35-foot lot or whatever that may exist on Dixon or some of these urban streets. We're still sending enormous amount of stormwater off of this mountain itself, through people's houses, through their yards, under their houses, around their houses. Some of them just waiting to get water in the house after a few more acres of paving upstream in red dirt. If they built them the old-fashioned way, if you look along MLK, immediately south of here, you see the small row houses. They are almost, they're really tiny, but they're built up off the ground. There is a possibility of growing native plants or garden plants or whatever you choose to have in that yard without creating any changes in that soil. And people did it years ago, and those houses are 100 years old in many cases and older. And why should we be doing it this super concrete, super red dirt way? People say, oh, this won't be affected, or it won't affect anybody. Yes, it does. And we've got to look at what's downstream. And the biggest thing on this side of town, it's Beaver Lake. A little bit this direction, a few blocks, once you get over to Maple and so forth, it's going to the Illinois River watershed to the northwest. And we've still got problems making sure our water's clean enough to be accepted by Oklahoma without lawsuit. So some of these arguments are unsound. They sound greedy. Why would you buy a 30-something foot width lot and expect to build something enormous on it, wherever it is? But it's all about watershed, and then these other things about what it does to property next door. The existing residents, I've only been in Fayetteville since the 60s. There's still people that have been here since before I was born in 1940, living in small houses and places. And they deserve to live in those houses in a comfortable way for the rest of their lives. So I guess what I would agree with Mr. Kenyon and Ms. Marsh and say that I would like to see this process continue by passing an ordinance that's acceptable and amending and changing and replacing it as need be, but don't let things go forward that we will regret. And all of you are familiar with some of those that are standing right now that people are already regretting. But please, let's get that low-impact ordinance. There are models for it all over the country. 3 years ago, I remember going to an office where they were working on it. When's this going to be ready? Well, by the first of the year. Well, the new first of the year, 3 years later, is just hit. So please.
Well, Aubrey, you need to know we actually have a low-impact ordinance. But it's not a mandatory ordinance. It's optional. I think Jeremy might be able to explain that, and that it has builders sometimes use parts of that, don't they, Jeremy? And it is optional. It's a fairly detailed ordinance. that has been passed and in place for several years.
Yes, sir, I appreciate that, and I know a bit about it. But the point is, it's an option. And with our situation in dealing with the cost of clean water and so forth, related matters, protection from flooding, then it should not be just an option. It should be the first option. An option would be, a variance would have to be made to red dirt a lot. A variance would have to be made to do anything that will possibly impact people and property downstream, and particularly Beaver Lake. Thank you.
Thank you, Aubrey. Who else would like to address us on this?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, my name is Steve Clark. I'm the president of the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce. We are here tonight having these discussions because our community is growing. We like that. We want our community to grow. We like the benefits of that growth as it allows us to have revenues to address the kinds of issues that you'll address later tonight and you've addressed in other times that deal with parks and recreation and deal with economic development and streets and trails and all those great things. In that area of change, it appears to me and to the chamber that the role the council has always played is a very, very important role. The first one is an oversight rule and an instruction kind of rule. Here's the broad picture of what we'd like to do. Then the specifics, which is for, as you heard spoken to earlier, designed by right. If you do these things based on our overall vision, you can grow, you can build, you can design, and you can implement. And then the last one you've always seemed to have is variance. You said, you know, we can't write rules and regulations and standards that will apply for every single case. We just can't do that because we're changing, we're growing. And so you leave an outlet for variance. So someone could come and say, we see the grand vision, we see the specifics, we would like to comply, but at this point we would like to seek a variance and ask for the opportunity to be heard as to whether that might be granted. That's a very important role for you to play. Tonight you're playing another role that I want to thank you, particularly Alderman Gray and Alderwoman Gray and Alderman Kenyon. When I appeared for you last on the base ordinance, the one that's being talked about to be amended, I asked you, and the chamber asked in a resolution, that you have more discussion, that you have charrettes, that you go back to every ward, that you give notice to everybody, and that even though it didn't affect every zoning criteria in the city of Fayetteville, it affected many, and that we were trying to do a lot here in a fairly short period of time. And I appreciate and thank both of you for trying to create an opportunity where we can have that further discussion. You can see tonight from what has been presented that there's discussion about the generic. What about the people who live in multifamily dwellings? And what about the people who live in multifamily dwellings who aren't being cared for? And that's very important to speak in the generic. But you also can see from tonight, you can speak in the specific. And two speakers before me spoke about their property, their development, not the generic, but what it would mean to them specifically for their right to develop and invest, following the broad scheme that you have, the specific scheme of development by right, and the scheme of variance if in fact that's what they were to seek. When you speak of specifics, then that variance issue becomes quite important. Also spoken tonight from Mr. Pate and others was a term that I speak to you as your economic advisor that gives me great concern, and that word is moratorium. Moratoriums is an indication in economic development terms, stop. Stop. When you're looking at change and you're looking at growing, yes, there are times you stop in the overall scheme to see you hit that broad base, that policy, specifics that designed by right and build by right, and then the variance. But it doesn't say you just quit. You just quit. And in particular, what becomes of concern to me about that issue and that term is that if this issue tonight is to be decided, and I'm going to recommend to you that you do decide it, I'm going to speak in favor of the amendment. But if there's to be a moratorium imposed tomorrow, it seems to me that the process here of growing is being stymied, and not by the council, but by the single introduction of a proposed ordinance. And so you've empowered 8 people to make the decisions individually for this community. And as I said in my initial comments, I thought the role of the council, and I believe the role of the council, is to set the broad scheme of things, the plan. You've done that with 2030, you've done that with the other plans. The ability to design by right, so you can build by right if you meet those qualifications, and the variance. But I didn't think it was the role of the council to be able individually, based on the decision of one single council member, to stop everything. That's a real concern I have to give you as your economic advisor. If the notion is that one member of this council can offer an ordinance for debate and discussion, and the net effect is to stop everything until that debate and discussion is resolved, you put your city at a very strong disadvantage. You put those specifics, the 2 people who appeared before you tonight, in a very difficult spot when it comes to dealing with their financial part of their project. Because money is time. You all know that better than I do. You do that as you deal with the city's money and all those issues. And so in this instance, it becomes very troubling to say to you that as this is being offered, the notion that we would go from moratorium to moratorium to moratorium is one that is not going to be promoting growth. Now, there will be exceptions always. There are exceptions to all of this. I've had conversations with several members of the council who pointed out to me exceptions, and they were correct. As I said, you cannot draft an ordinance that covers every absolute circumstance. And the fact that there is an exception doesn't mean that the ordinance is bad. It just means we have a complicated city. We're the 3rd largest city in the state, and we should be a little complicated because of that. So I say to you this, I think this amendment as offered, and I said this the last time I was before you, is that it gets to specifics that need to be addressed, particularly the issue of home protection, particularly the issue of single-family dwelling. I suggested the last time I spoke to you that the 2 areas that you focus on is what this amendment does focus on, Downtown General and Main Street Center. We said, I looked at some of the suggestions and some of the cities that were mentioned that had done development and done ordinances like this, and several of the ones that I looked at, including Washington, D.C., had a series of various setbacks and height designs based on where you were in the city, based on what kind of neighborhood surrounded it, based on the changing nature of the neighborhood, based on the rights of single-family dwellings, based on the right of multifamily dwelling, but not one single application that applied to all. And so I think what this does is address the issues that are right here today in front of us. I think it does it in a way that's fair. I think it's a way that is specific. I think it may do it in a way that requests there will be people coming before the appropriate bodies of the city and then eventually perhaps before you asking for variance. But that's not bad. That's not bad at all. What it does do, it gets us to act. What it does do is gets us out of that term moratorium. What it does do is say, if you are an owner of a single-family residence, and that's not everybody in the community, we know that, and it will never be everybody in the community, and we know that. But for those who are owners of single-family residences, or those who are living, much as the example was given by one of the previous speakers, in units of up to 3 that are built and share common facilities, for them, it gives them specifics. It is their home. It is important to them. As we face change in this city, they like to know that that importance is being recognized. And some have come to believe and convinced me that they don't have that protection and they need it. And so I'm asking you to do 2 things tonight. I'm asking you to adopt the amendment as it's offered. I'm asking you then to, once you adopt that amendment, to adopt that as a part of the ordinance. I'm also asking you not to be a part of an effort to use your power individually as city alderman to stop change, to stop growth. Moratoriums are tough, tough concepts, and they have lasting impacts. Lasting impacts in this sense. Today, our office, on behalf of you, were contacted by people who want to help Fayetteville grow. Because it didn't apply to some of the issues that are here tonight, I didn't have to say anything about a moratorium. I said, no, yeah, we'd love to talk to you. We'd like to find out more about it. But if we're going to get to the posture that any time an ordinance is filed, we go to moratorium, that's a change, and a significant change, a very significant change. It seems to me that you have constructed a very, very professional, very, very responsible, and a group of professionals in our regulatory scheme that's done by our planning department and run by Jeremy and all of his team, that you not only have confidence in, but you also review and check to make certain that the decisions that they make in accordance with this overall vision you set, the specifics of how you design and what can be done with the variance are followed to the letter. I think we should trust them. We've been proven pretty smart trusting them in the past. We've developed a wonderful city that all of you love just as I love, and like all the other people behind me here tonight love. And we'll disagree from time to time about what makes it the most wonderful or how we can make it even more wonderful, but we need to move on making it wonderful. And so I know it's a difficult decision for you, but I implore you to make that decision tonight. I implore you to make the decision of adopting this amendment. I implore you not to take a decision that says that you will use moratorium in a fashion and in a means that just simply says, as you discuss new ideas, you stop all change from occurring. Because change is not bad for us. Growth is not bad for us. And the people who are the protectors against that unnecessary growth or unsuitable growth sit right here in front of you. And I have great confidence in them. I know you do too. You've all complimented them tonight. And so if that's the way we do business, let's continue to do business that way. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Who else would like to address us on this?
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Bob Estes. I live in Ward 4, and I represent Ms. Shirkey. The amendment that is before you provides protections that are clearly appropriate. It applies only in the Main Street Center and downtown general zoning districts. It was drafted by your city attorney. He would not bring a matter before you that is illegal or unlawful. It is good legislation, and I would ask that you do pass.
Thank you, Bob. All right. Who else would like to address us on this?
Good evening. I'm Russell Rodzinski. I live in Ward 3. I would like to urge you all to not support any of these ordinances that are in front of you tonight. I think that I've been watching this in the newspaper. Fortunately, Ms. Hopper's class brought me here tonight with my son. It's given me an opportunity to weigh in on this. And I've been thinking about it from both sides for the last month or two. From my perspective, I think that people that have properties in these districts had ample opportunity to research the zoning rules that were in effect at the time. I think that the zoning rules that we've had in place since I've been in Fayetteville and since I've been working here in Fayetteville, I think are doing an adequate job, frankly. Ultimately, I've been here looking at these 2030 goals, and I think that this new setback ordinance would sort of violate at least 3 of those, as I can see. The first one says we will make appropriate infill and revitalization our highest priorities. It seems that this is anti-infill in many ways, and we've heard a couple of examples of that already. It says that we will discourage suburban sprawl. by instituting extreme setbacks in a part of the city that was intended probably by the people that founded the town to be of an urban character, it seems that you're actually encouraging a suburban type of density to encroach into the downtown area. And the last one that I see is we will create opportunities for attainable housing. Multi-story buildings are much cheaper to build and in order to provide more affordable housing to people in the area. Now, I'm an architect. I think there's nothing inherently monstrous about a 280-unit apartment building. There are many of them all over the world, and they're incredibly beautiful. I don't think size is necessarily an aesthetic label or an aesthetic pariah. I think that ultimately the things that this ordinance is trying to restrict ultimately should be put in the trust of the people that have been building and revitalizing downtown Fayetteville pretty successfully so far for the last 20, 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else?
Hi, Nina Shirky, Block Street. I would just like to address that last comment that owning a home downtown means that you accept the development codes. I was actually born in the home that was built in 1906, long before this plan was developed. I would just like to keep that in your memory. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address us on this?
Good evening. I'm not one for public speaking, so I'm going to keep this brief. My name is Alex Blass. I'm with Sage Partners here in Fayetteville. I work in commercial real estate. I actually work with a developer that is doing development in every SEC school, as well as several other college campuses like this all over the country. And I've had the ability to travel and look at several other cities like this. Steve Clark mentioned, talking about other cities. I think that before anything is decided on what's done in Fayetteville, I think there needs to be more time to look at what's done in other cities, other college campuses where they are growing, where they're seeing the same stuff happening that what we're seeing. I love Fayetteville. I don't think I'll ever leave, but I think that you also have to look at some of the college towns that are seeing the growth that we're seeing now before we got to it and see how they've addressed it, because they've grown. You're seeing multifamily, high-density development happening there, and it looks great and it's aesthetically pleasing. But by just doing something to where you're having such a setback, is really it's 30 feet off two sides of, for example, Ms. Shirky's property. I think that there should be perhaps some sort of setback, but 30 feet is a lot. If there'd be some way that it could even be shortened to, in some way, I think that would be a way to where it'd be a meeting in the middle, to where people that do have the smaller lots would be able to still do development, and it would still be able to protect some of the view and the sunlight for the single-family residents that are in place right now. I think that the idea of the exact 30 feet is going to make a plant grow better is a very subjective idea. I think that could be argued that, the plant maybe didn't grow because you overwatered it, or you were just you don't have a green thumb as to why your yard doesn't look good. I think that that's not a good basis for doing the setbacks. At the same time, I don't think that anyone like Ms. Shirky should have a house that looks like it's in the middle of New York with a straight up 84-foot brick wall around it, but the 15-foot setback with an additional 15-foot setback really, not only with her property, but future growth in the downtown area is really inhibited by the ability of what's in place now. And I know that this is just a temporary idea, but I'm working with a developer right now, and we've got 3 projects that we've been waiting patiently on trying to get this approved, and we have to hit a construction start date of April 30th. Otherwise, we have to delay a year because we have a set delivery date, and otherwise, if we delay any longer, we're not going to make it. So I would implore that this be shut down until we can have more time to look at other cities and have more discussion within the city itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who else would like to address us?
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, my name is Tracy Hoskins, of course. While I believe that this amendment is a marked improvement from what was originally before us, and I'm extremely ecstatic that we've actually gotten back to this point of more simple ordinance or what have you. The only concern I have with it is as some of our other folks have spoken before us, and I find myself in agreement with a couple of the council members up there, that the 15-foot setback along with a 15-foot step back of a total of 30 feet is going to seriously diminish the usability of a particular piece of property, especially smaller properties in downtown. And I would, while I'm glad to see this amendment and something more like this pass, I hope that the council would consider something as far as at least adjusting one or the other. Either, as I had mentioned last time when I was up here, the step backs of a property, of a building, creates a significant amount of additional building cost. And the further you step down that upper section of the building, the further that structure is away from the exterior walls of the building. So therefore, what holds that up has to be significantly larger. And so I would hate to see us put an ordinance in place that's going to elevate construction costs so significantly. And I'm not real sure that once you get above 36 feet, I'm not really sure that a 5-foot step back or a 30-foot step back really is going to make a whole lot of difference to the single-family residents down below. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to address us? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council. All right, here we go. All right, Sarah.
I agree that these 15-foot setbacks are really extreme, and I'm shocked, actually, that the Chamber of Commerce would endorse such a proposal that would disincentivize the construction of retail spaces in our downtown area. You know, we really need retail spaces, and we need restaurant spaces, and we need the types of spaces that bring vitality and economic opportunities into our downtown, and this really disincentivizes that. No offense to Mr. Overby, but his building of 1 story on Block Street is not a model that I think we need to reproduce. You know, we need good 2 to 4 story buildings in our downtown. You know, a few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of representing our city at the National League of Cities Conference in Seattle. And while I was there, I took the opportunity to use the Walk Score app on my phone, which is an app that ranks walkability with actual metrics. It basically looks at the diversity of services that are available within a 1/4 mile range of any location, as well as the density of residences. And I focused on looking for areas that with a walk score of 95 or higher, which is considered a walker's paradise. And what I found there were not tall buildings, but a lot of neighborhoods filled with 2 to 4 story buildings. What I also saw were a lot of new companies and large desirable companies such as Microsoft and Amazon in buildings sporting LEED plaques along green streets with noticeable LID development strategies in place. You know, I saw a lot of new development that was drawn to these sustainable buildings, and I noticed that the key to making these neighborhoods successful was not the density so much as it was the variety of services that were available in those neighborhoods, being good mixed-use neighborhoods with, you know, I saw a hospital that on the main floor it had a flower shop, a coffee shop, a noodle house, and a small gift shop. You know, that's the kind of thing that I want to see happen in Fayetteville. When I envision the future of our community, I see a mid-rise, walkable community filled with sustainable buildings, and that was what I intended to do with my ordinance. You know, I wanted to put the appropriate in infill. And while I think that this does offer some good protections for single-family residences, it swings the pendulum too far back against opportunities for good infill development and a diversity of building types in our downtown. And so I'm going to have a really hard time supporting it as it is. You know, in an effort to go ahead and pass something tonight, you know, if we want, I would propose an amendment that The new multifamily commercial office parking deck or mixed-use construction number be raised from 24 to 39 feet, so we at least get some three-story development. I think that could be healthy in our downtown, and that we go ahead and amend the maximum building height further down also to 39 feet. But I do think we need to come back and take a serious hard look at those 15-foot setbacks and stepbacks, because those are development killers.
Okay, you want to put an amendment to go to 39?
Yes,
Help
both
me out
numbers
here.
are 39 feet.
39 feet. Is there a second on that?
I have a question. I don't understand how this inhibits commercial development.
It limits us to 1 to 2 story buildings, which are not really economically viable for commercial projects. I think if we bumped it up to 3 stories, we would be much more attractive to the type of development that the citizens of our community are asking for in our 2030 city plan.
Is there a second to the amendment to 39 feet? Okay. All right. What else? What other comments do we have? Sure.
You know, everybody up here, I think, wants to support the heritage in Fayetteville. You go back and watch the tapes from the previous meeting, it's pretty clear we all feel that that's very important. And I know that's the intention of this ordinance, and when I spoke earlier, what I was speaking about were unintended consequences. Most laws have them. We can only hope that they're innocuous, but in this case, they're not, in my opinion. Talked about those earlier, but I have to say, you know, I too want to see action on this. I thought that we reached some great compromises at the Ordinance Review Committee. It doesn't mean that perhaps another amendment or two wasn't needed, but we were making progress. I'm disappointed, I understand the reasons, but I'm disappointed that we haven't honored the chairman's request to at least discuss those amendments. I don't see an emergency need here. I don't see a true crisis. And I feel like that's how we're reacting, as if this is a crisis. And what I see is a textbook response to a crisis. I see an overreaction. You know, I have to say that even though I won't support this amendment, I wouldn't support passing the original ordinance tonight either, because it wouldn't include the compromises we made at the Ordinance Review Committee, which I found to be salient and paramount. So I would be in favor of taking no action. I guess I indicated that with my second for the tabling earlier.
Okay.
I guess what it comes down to is I just can't support, I can't vote for a law that I think is bad just to buy us more time.
Okay. So
Can I
you,
ask a question about
yes, ma'am,
ordinance-
you may.
About ordinance review, Alderman Petty, there are 4 members of the council on ordinance review. I think 1 member was out of town, what, right?
No, it's a meeting.
You're in a meeting. So it was Alderman Long, Alderman Marsh, Alderman Petty, and who was and Schottmer, okay.
Well, you were there at the
So I came,
beginning
yes,
because I did
and-
watch the tape.
Yeah, I just, it was very quick in the first few minutes that the Ordinance Review Committee decided not to look at the other ordinance, so I guess I feel like it's not entirely reasonable or fair to say that there was some conclusion made at that committee meeting that would have swayed the rest of us to that direction, when we didn't even get to talk about at all about the one that was presented at the meeting. So I do think we've put a lot of time into this. We've had some very good conversations. We've had some good back and forth about it. But I'm ready to vote on this tonight.
Anybody else? Okay, now we're voting on the amendment, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Okey dokey. All right. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray? Yes. Marsh?
No.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Petty?
No.
Tennant?
Yes.
Shopmire?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
So the amendment passed, and so now before you is the amended ordinance.
Okay. Do we need to, any final comments on the amended ordinance? Okay, any public comment on the amended ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, I'm sorry to have to step back up here. Just for clarification, we have removed any language of LEED certification or including any type of residential in a building or whatever, shadow studies, all of the above. We have removed that from the ordinance.
That's my understanding.
Yes, I read what was covered. It's very
Okay,
short.
so the
Right here.
amendment is
I'll give you
actually.
a copy of that if you want.
That'd be great. So the amendment is actually the ordinance in full. Yes. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Anybody else?
Mayor, council members, Seth Mims, Specialized Real Estate Group, please forgive me for asking for clarification, but would you mind please clarifying what is the ordinance we're about to vote on? Is it the one that came out of Ordinance Review Committee? Is it the one that Kit proposed at Ordinance Review Committee?
From what I understand, it's the one that Kid proposed with the addition of multifamily, commercial, office, parking deck, or mixed-use construction. Am I correct?
Yes, at the Ordinance Review Committee, I just had multifamily, commercial, and mixed use. I realize that in fact we have office buildings that are tall, so I needed to include them. I thought parking decks would probably already be included, but just to alleviate any question, I put parking decks in too. But apart from that, this is what was handed out at the Ordinance Review Committee, and this is what was amended, and this is what is before the City Council at this point in time.
Thank you. Then my question would be, this ordinance is a lot more like the original ordinance that Mr. Williams proposed, which was 15 and then up and then 15 to the underlying zone. Okay. I just want to make it clear that I really believe with all my heart that an ordinance like that would completely stifle development in downtown. You will for sure be pushing downtown to the outskirts. There are a lot of needs on the outskirts. Companies like ours can fulfill needs on the outskirts, near the outer infill locations. We're certainly happy to do that, but I just want to make sure you guys know that I think a 15-foot setback, then up to be at 24, 36, 39, and then another 15 before you can go up to the underlying zoning is absolutely extensive, and I really do believe will greatly affect development in downtown. And before I sit down, let me just briefly say, if anyone considers another moratorium, you know, guys, there are a lot of deals that are out there right now that I'm not a party to, but that I'm aware of. There are 2 hotels coming to town, hopefully, one in downtown, one in uptown. There are 2 big boxes circling uptown. Actually, they've already found a location. One of those is exactly the kind of store that you want in Fayetteville. There is a destination retailer who has chosen a spot in uptown. If you guys talk about another moratorium, you're going to push all those things out, and the danger there is there's a competing development in Springdale at the corner of 412 and 540 that is looking for those same folks. And if you put a moratorium on here, I'm afraid that you're going to lose them to that competing city. And so I just ask you to please, let's not talk about more moratoriums. Let's pass something or not. And then second of all, just I want to make sure that no one feels like I didn't say my heart's honest feeling about this. 15 and then 15 is too much. Yes, sir.
Seth, I think that you've come before us before and asked for variances with very good projects, and you've received them. And as was mentioned by our economic development through the chamber, you do have that opportunity, and I think that what we're offering here is what was expected initially when we started the discussion, but you still do have the opportunity to come and say, you know what, we've got this idea that is meeting the demands for infill. And if you can, I mean, haven't you had success doing that in the past? I think so.
Yes, I've experiences in the past.
Okay, that's what you have with the integrity of the 8 individuals that are setting up here to understand that there are situations where we need to take a serious look at what the opportunity is. And so you've had the opportunity to come before us and get variances for, and very successfully, because you have a good plan with a good opportunity to meet the needs of the inner city of Fayetteville. And so I think that I embrace that opportunity to give these variances, and that you always have that opportunity to come before us. So that's my argument to get this taken care of tonight, is to offer some type, first of all, to lift the moratorium, because that just kills it, but also to recognize that right now we're in an economic advancement stage, especially similar to the ones we talked about in Walker Park, where we need to get the opportunities to get mortgages through to individuals so that they can get into their homes. And so that's the intent of this that I have offered this evening.
Yes, sir. Thank you for caring about the city, and I do deeply respect your opinion. Mine still stands that I'm afraid this ordinance is overreaching. I respectfully say that. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, on the moratorium issue. Moratoriums are kind of tricky creatures. They can be legal if they are relatively short and for a determined amount of time, and there's a reason behind it. And so when we drafted the moratorium language for the Unified Development Code, in fact, we had that language in there that created a moratorium here, and probably rightly so, because there was an issue that was coming before you that was very timely, and you need enough time to work on it in order to protect your citizens. However, repeated moratoriums, I think, fall far outside the spirit of the Unified Development Code. I don't think they were ever envisioned that there would be repetitive moratoriums, and that begins to make their legality come more into question, because it would not be proper to have a long-term moratorium set up without extremely strong grounds of great danger to our citizens that could possibly support something like that. So I don't think a new moratorium would be appropriate. I think it would be dangerous. I don't think we need that. We can certainly look, you use the planning department resources and look at amending anything, making other changes. But to immediately try to go back in and present some sort of new zoning ordinance that would cause a moratorium, I think would be very inappropriate and could be dangerous. It's something I would not recommend, and I don't think it is necessary. If you decide to pass this particular ordinance, then the immediate problem that caused this should be protected and resolved and saved. There could certainly be more issues to be brought up in height requirements, in other setbacks for other types of buildings. Certainly that could be looked at, but I would think that it would be much better to have it looked at at planning and go through that whole process rather than submitting another ordinance very quickly that could possibly kick in this moratorium language again. And in fact, if that started to happen, I would make a suggestion that we look very carefully about whether or not we can legally continue to use that moratorium language, because you can go too far in a moratorium and cause damage not only to the development community but also some potential liability to the city. So we don't want to do that if at all possible, and I don't think we need to. I think we can look at the other things that you want to look at, examine them without kicking in the moratorium language again. And I had a slight email conversation with Jeremy Pate and Alderman Marsh about this, and I think that Jeremy and I both advised that we felt like a second moratorium would not be appropriate in this particular case. I don't know, Jeremy, if you want to address anything about our conversation that we had on the email.
I think primarily our conversation dealt with the ability to withdraw an item, which I think has been discussed tonight. And once it's before the council, it's really for the council to decide where that item goes. And then the proposal of a new item for the council to consider. And like I said, we haven't really utilized this option very often. The last time we did was many years ago, and this is only the second time in my 10 years here, almost 11 years here, that we've actually utilized this type of moratorium. So I certainly think it is used with great care when you are considering any type of stopgap measure or consideration of an ordinance that would cease development for a specific type.
Okay. Any other public comment? Yes.
Hi, Russell Rosinski, Ward 3. It always amazes me that when Fayetteville talks about its future, it always seems to be some kind of frozen version of the past. You know, I'm all for preserving heritage. I think that's fantastic. But, you know, Mr. Clark mentioned that we're the third largest city in the state, and I think with these restrictions, you're preventing the city from growing up to reflect that really important ranking. So I encourage you to vote down the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Officer Shepherd, it would really be fun if all those people out around the square looking at the lights, talking about trivial things or shopping or whatever, were watching this meeting or could see it by standing outside or something on a huge screen and hear what you discuss, because people just do not seem to show up and care about what's going on. You all hear from people who would have valid opinions to share here. I'd love to hear them all. Anyway, the business of setbacks, that's part of this discussion that's been brought up here. My experience seeing construction going on, and this isn't just downtown, but if there's not a wide enough setback, construction machinery, piles of dirt, gravel, all this stuff is put out in the street surrounding the property. And that shouldn't occur. If you don't have a big enough lot to build on that site, why are you trying to build there? That should be one of the regulations. No machines working from off the site. You just see these streets blocked because of this stuff going on. Not for a few minutes, but for days sometimes. And, you know, they're using giant lift machines to get these two-story houses up. Some of them have lift machines just to do the roofing. You know, big thing that tears up a lot of ground, damages the curbs where it enters the site, and that has to be replaced, and often they're not because they're built and then they're still torn up some more. There are just too many reasons to to avoid damaging other people's property and other people's rights during the construction. And anybody who's lived close to one of these things knows about this, but they're not all here. You know, they're not all here. And so I just don't think that we're going to lose these people that desperately want to have their project built in Fayetteville. They're going to work with you to do it in better ways if you insist on sticking to rules that will be good for the whole citizenry of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Who else would like to address us on the amended ordinance? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. All right, any final comments? Yes, Sarah.
You know, when I first proposed this ordinance, we had the 15-foot and 15-foot setback and 15-foot step back in it, and The intention of that was to do something really extreme so that when we came back with something later that everyone would say, oh, that's so much better. Now here we are back at this really extreme language. You know, and my intention with the previous ordinance, you know, with all the amendments, was to find something that was really strategic and context sensitive and not something that was this broad and sweeping. I can't support this, even though there's a lot of good intention in here. This is just a gross distortion of what I had initially intended. And so I'm not going to vote for it. I'm especially disappointed that we're still not addressing parking decks. You know, this last weekend was, we had this Main Street shopping on Saturday, and I shopped along Block Street, and there were a lot of people out on Block Street, and then I turned the corner to go to By Request and Passages, and there was really not anybody over there, probably because there's a parking deck killing that street, an exposed parking deck that prohibits retail from thriving on that street. And there's also really narrow sidewalks, which are hard to navigate for people with mobility issues, and this does nothing to address our sidewalks. So I think that this is really bad for the livability of our downtown. It's bad for commercial viability, and I can't support it.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. If there's not any final discussion, Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Gray? Yes. Marsh?
No.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Petty?
No.
Tennant?
Yes.
Shopmire?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, it's 5 to 8. Does anybody want a break? I need a short break, to be honest with you. Let's take about 10 minutes and then we'll do it.